Hi guys, welcome to another LivinginSAtv podcast, SA Entrepreneurial podcast. David here. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Darlene Menzies and she's the CEO and co-founder of Finfind, a company that was pioneered in the field of finance and helped thousands and thousands of small medium enterprises in South Africa to connect with fund providers in a very creative way. And today we're gonna know her and also understand her amazing work. Don't you believe me? Stay tuned because this video once again blow your mind. Hi everyone, welcome to another Living in SA Entrepreneurial podcast. Today we have an amazing guest in our show. Her name is Darlene Menzies, and Darlene Menzies is the founder and CEO of Finfind. Hi Darlene, how are you?
Yes, wonderful, David. Thank you for having me on the show.
So it's such a pleasure to have you on the show because Darlene has a very inspirational project that joins entrepreneurs with funders. And we're going to talk about it. Let me give you guys a little bit of the background behind Darlene's work. The World Economic Forum named Darlene Menzies one of 6 top female tech entrepreneurs in Africa. Darlene is a technology innovator and serial entrepreneur with 15 years corporate experience in the banking and ICT sector. Since leaving corporate employment in 2001, she has established several successful technology businesses and has first-hand experience in what it takes to start and grow businesses and understands the difficulties entrepreneurs must overcome to do so. She is currently CEO of Finfind, an online platform that helps startups find funding. Launched in 2015, it now has more than 500,000 users and has facilitated more than 95,000 loan deals for SME lenders. Darlene, this is amazing since I really need to know what have you done to reach these numbers because this is really amazing. Well done.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it. You know, I think Finfind really was I was solving a problem for myself and then realized that many other entrepreneurs were struggling with exactly the same issues. And funding is really one of the big Achilles heels for entrepreneurs and small business owners. So really, we've gathered those numbers by really addressing a big problem in the market with a very simple solution.
Our first question will be, how did the idea for the business start?
Sure. Start right at the beginning, which is great. So I worked, as you said in the intro, I worked in corporate IT for about 15 years. And then I left. I got part of a nonprofit sector for a while, really starting to understand some of the real issues around systemic poverty in the country and where the real unemployment challenges were. And from there, I decided to start a software development company that could build systems that could change problems at the base of the pyramid. So things for unemployment, things for SMEs. And the 2 major problems that I decided to address, one was that most entrepreneurs don't understand finances and accounting. So we developed one product called SMEZ, which is an online accounting system. And then secondly, I knew that they all were struggling to access funding. So we started the product Finfind, which is a very simple, it's like they say the Tinder of SME funding. On the one side, we've got all of the lenders in the country, all of the funders, so over 600 products, grant funding, debt funding, equity funding, any type of funding that any lender offers in this country. And on the other side, the entrepreneurs come in and they say, you know, they're a woman-owned business in Gauteng and construction, they're looking for a certain thing. And then in the back end, we use data-driven algorithms to match them. Like you would in a dating app, instead of matching 2 people who want to go on a date, we're matching a finance seeker with a finance provider and bringing them together so that they're able to bring that opportunity to a close and do a deal for funding. So really, when you say how we started, I liquidated 3 times before I became successful. So I started businesses, struggled to run them because I didn't understand finance, I didn't understand funding, how to get access to funding. And once I started learning the secrets to that, and as an entrepreneur, what I needed to do, how the system worked, how to circumvent the system, we developed a simple solution that could actually offer that to other entrepreneurs. So our problem solved for ourselves and then solved for others. That's really the simple way that we started.
That's really amazing. There is one thing that people sometimes don't realize is how innovative South African can really be. And see ideas as yours just proves my point. South Africa is really an innovative country in many things. Sometimes people don't even realize it. And that was such an amazing breakthrough that you did in the industry. You definitely a pioneer in your field.
Thanks. I say difficulty breeds opportunity. That's a good saying. And when you, in any country, especially I think in any kind of emerging market, we faced with different challenges maybe to first world countries, but we actually therefore can have an opportunity to come up with many more solutions. But if you don't have, when you've got a field of problems, you've got a field of opportunity. And so, that was always my take on something. And one of the things I wanted to really share on this platform was to say, for entrepreneurs, innovation is not sort of sitting down and having a brainstorming session to try and come up with the next best thing. It's actually just solving a problem that you have. If you have a specific problem and you look and there's many more people struggling with that problem, if you can come up with a solution that can solve that you're able to turn into a business opportunity, that's really what innovation is. Thinking differently to other people to solve a problem. I've had many people come to me after SMEZ and Finfind were developed and became successful to say, gee, that's really simple. I could have thought of that. And I said, absolutely. Anybody can think of those ideas. It's about having the courage to actually put that into action and develop the idea, persevere through the challenges and bring them to market. So I encourage anybody out there. I have no university education. I went straight from school into the bank as a cashier. And I think that it's not often about academia. It's more about pragmatism, practical solutions to real problems. That's what innovation is for me.
Second question, what were your challenges when starting up the business?
Sure. So I think the challenges, when you look at a startup can be over a number of years. The initial challenges or the things I think that entrepreneurs need to be aware of in those initial years is not to over-focus on things like, the business name, the branding, etc. When you start up, those things start to change quite quickly as the business develops its personality and starts to morph into what it's supposed to be. So I always say, start really simple. A simple logo, simple colors, just start off with a basic web page, etc. Because I think people dive into spending a lot of time and money into over-investing in that initial period, and then find later that they should have just got on with doing the business itself. So the initial problems for us is our expenses were a little bit, your expenses start to climb before your income does. So keeping things lean startup, as they've said, these terminologies came many years after IB sort of really became successful or understood the recipe to business. But my initial challenges were growth is always a big problem. So, when it was just me or one or two of us in the business, the DNA of what you're doing is quite easy to share. As the business starts to grow and you start to include people, I think building a team is probably the most difficult thing to do and where the majority of challenges come. And, they say that we don't build a business, we build a team and a team builds a business. So my advice always to entrepreneurs is be very careful about who you choose for your team. I often say choose for attitude, choose for character, and you can train for skill. Now, that's not always true when you come to software developers, etc. You need certain expertise. But I always say that it's far better to get somebody maybe that hasn't had an academic background, that's had a practical background, maybe struggled a bit themselves, understands real problems, because these are often people that you're able to work with and build team better. So I think early struggles for me were finding the recipe to grow team. The other thing I did wrong, which I often say to entrepreneurs, is if you've got a specialized area in your business where it's quite a high cost in terms of the resource, rather get someone to consult into that area for a few hours or a day or two that's needed, rather than try and employ for that skill and pay that person and find work for them to do. So, get some really hard workers around you, people that are practical, they have the same value system as you, differently skilled with the same values to build your business. Hire in and consult in for your expert skills as you need them. and start building a base of people. And, hardship will start to really weed out the people who are not really in it for the long run. But I think building team was probably my biggest challenge. And then also make my overheads growing too quickly when I was waiting for income to come in. So keeping it lean, just building in, getting revenue in. And then the most important thing, doing the admin. I always say sales will bring in the business, but only financial record keeping will keep you in business. And many entrepreneurs just start selling because they want revenue, not realizing that their pricing isn't right. They're losing money left, right, and center because they're not doing just the basic administration and record keeping in their business. So record keeping, building team, and keeping your overheads low would probably be the three areas that I struggled with, failed in, and then had to start again.
Well, let's go now for the third question. Can you tell us about your previous business ventures?
Sure. So, I think that failure is actually part of the recipe to success. Many people don't like to talk about failure because they think it's a negative thing. But in actual fact, there's very few, I don't know if any, very successful people who didn't fail along the way, because it's part of, when Usain Bolt was born, he couldn't run. He his legs had to get strong, and then he would start to walk. And when he fell, his parents didn't say, well, this guy's useless. He's never going to walk. He's never going to, you can envisage where you're going, but you have to stand up, learn to walk, fall again, stand up again. And for me, I started, my first business was actually quite an interesting venture. It was an underwear business for Africa. So I realized that South Africa had opportunity in a certain company with a lot of obsolete stock, but they couldn't sell it locally because they couldn't put that same fabric into the competitive market for their customers. So I said, well, I would get people to sew the same stock in underwear and sell it over the border of South Africa, and I called it Undies for Africa. And I lost about 150K, liquidated, started up again in a software development business, went down about 1.2 million, lost my home, my car, landed up at my parents in my mid-30s. And so I had a couple of failures, and it was all along the road of learning how to keep it lean, how to understand the financial side of my business, how to keep records, how to make sure that I wasn't only focusing on sales, that I was also focusing on the structures in the business. So yeah, I had a failure of a retail underwear sort of business. I had a failure of a software development business. And before I actually started to develop product like SMEZ, I had a successful recruitment online software called JobLinks that we sold to one of the big retailers in South Africa. But it wasn't sort of one idea, get a recipe and be successful. It took me a lot of falling and standing up. But they say it's not how many times you fall, but that you got up again. And success does come. That's how it works.
Thank you very much for your testimony. It's really, really powerful, your words and your experience. It speaks for itself, basically. So let's go to the fourth question. So what are you most proud of the work that you develop every day?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. For me, I always said that anything I do had to have a direct impact on somebody that was either in a disadvantaged situation or in a situation where they didn't have to make the mistakes I made. They could learn from the tools that we developed. So the thing I'm most proud of is when people buy SMEZ, which is our online accounting system that does invoicing, quoting, payroll for very small businesses, or whether they use Finfind to find funding, I know that we're having a direct impact on a small business that's employing other people. And so for me, that brings me incredible satisfaction, because my goal is that less people, I'm not saying less people would fail, because I think people will fail as they learn to build their business, but that less people liquidate, that less people have to go through the challenges that I went through, that the tools that we develop can actually be made available to them so that they can do their business admin, they can get funding, and that they actually can keep their staff, retain their staff, grow their businesses, because that's what South Africa needs, that's what this continent needs. Because small businesses are the champions of Africa. We're the only entity in the business environment and government environment that's going to really soak up the unemployment crisis that the continent has. And so the thing that makes me most satisfied is to make sure that we're helping other entrepreneurs to keep in business, to grow their business, to employ more people.
Next question. So what are the traits of an efficient leader in order to take the business forward?
What an interesting word. I read that, efficient leader. Efficiency is a good thing because efficiency means that you're keeping it lean and you're going forward. But, I think the most important trait, efficiencies come, but before that comes courage and perseverance and tenacity. They say it's not the smartest people that succeed, but those that hang on the longest. When I've spoken in forums publicly, obviously now with Corona, we're more virtual. The thing that has affected, I noticed over the years, other entrepreneurs most to open them to talk was me being honest about my failures. So after I'd talk, I'd come down, from the speaking thing, and then people would come and they'd say, gee, I failed, but I didn't want to tell anybody. And it's been a thing. And I've said to them, we must celebrate our failures. They actually mean we're on the way to success. Because most people are, you normally, the average is about a 2.7 failure rate of business before you hit it big. And if people aren't prepared to speak about their failures, I only invest in people financially if they have failed. If they come to me and I say, is this your first business? And they say, yes, I like the passion and obviously the courage is there, but I know that most likely that business is going to go down the tubes and they're going to start again. And it's very seldom that I will get involved in personally investing in someone who's never, ever, or who's afraid to tell me about their failures. If you can embrace your failures, it means you've learned lessons and you've been able to embrace the things that caused you to get there. If you don't acknowledge failure, then actually there's an arrogance around saying, you're not going to learn from that. So yeah, I don't know. Just to me, pragmatism is just being very real and authentic about life, because life's not easy in every way, and more so these days,
And again, the way you humanize the whole experience about speaking about entrepreneurship, that is, like I say, it's probably one of the biggest things that you open to people in that way. And I think people learn so much more. I think sometimes we need to be vulnerable a little bit in order to achieve certain heights. And like
I agree.
The way you talk, even for me, I feel, wow. I feel like
we can do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're all the same. I think when we realize that we all, that is the kind of leveler, male or female, living in South Africa or another country, whatever you face, whatever the divide, there's so much division in the world these days, whatever, if it's political, whatever it may be, ultimately, we're all just trying to make a living, make a difference and go forward. And if we're not real about the challenges that we face, then we can't give courage to other people who are in those situations, because they look at someone and think, well, gee, I could never do it. But if they realize someone never went to university, they failed a few times, and all they did was solve a problem they had, well, they think, well, shippers, they're no more special than I am. Anyone can do that, because that's all it is for me. You know what's interesting, and I love what you're saying about this, because I don't know if you know Alan Not Craig, but he's a very successful entrepreneur too, and we've spoken on different platforms before. And he stood up once and he was talking about the keys for success, and he was saying having a good marriage. And the start of my talk, I obviously didn't know what he was going to say, but I was talking as a woman in IT, and I stood up and I said I was going to speak about Microsoft had done a study, and they said to be a successful entrepreneur in South Africa, they had done a survey, and they said that the successful businesses were, number one, people that the founder had been to university. Number two, that the head offices or the businesses were from Johannesburg or Cape Town. Number three was they were male.
No.
And number four was that they were a certain age. I think it was around 40. And I stood up and I said, well, what's quite interesting is that Alan Not Craig has added a fifth to that, and they said they've married. I said, now let me tell you, I'm standing up here. They've asked me to speak as a successful fintech entrepreneur. Number one, I didn't go to university. Number two, my business is in Durban, not Joburg or Cape Town. Number three, I'm a woman, not a man. Number four, I'm 50, not 40. And number five, I'm not married and never have been. And so this is why I think the recipe for success is not about gender. It can be about age, because I think some experience under your belt is helpful. But to me, the question you were asking just now was about being an efficient leader. And I think the traits of an incredible leader are really tenacity and grit, because challenges come. It doesn't matter what industry sector, what problem you take on. When you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get challenged in every way. You're going to get challenged even from those closest to you who want to protect you. Shame, it's difficult. Why don't you go back to a real job? You know, those are some of the subtle challenges. You get other challenges where, you know, it's month end, you need 100,000, you've got 2,000 and you've got staff to pay. Those are real challenges. You know, you get product challenges, there's all kinds of challenges. And really, if you are optimistic, if you're a pragmatist, but you're a realist, but you're optimistic. I like optimistic, pragmatic realists. I don't like pessimistic idealists, people with these ideals, but they see if the world is you know, you've got to wake up on the right side of the bed. You've got to know problems are going to come at you, and that's fine. It's how we deal with them. And I think efficient leaders are those that can actually embrace adversity and really just hold on through the hard times. Because the amazing thing I found is every day, no matter how bad the day is, the sun comes up the next day. The sun doesn't stay down, you know, and so if you can embrace that as just a knowledge that things change, and sometimes just actually holding on through a problem will get you through, other times getting advice through a problem. But if your attitude is right, to me, those are the good leaders. They can take their team through hard times, keep encouraging their teams in difficulty, being willing to have the hard conversation. Sometimes you've got to sit your team down and say, listen, we're coming through a very narrow part of the journey here. You know, the oasis is only, you know, a few months away, or whatever the case may be. So I think it doesn't, when people ask, what is it like to be a woman leader? I say it's not actually gender specific. It's not actually to a certain degree age specific. It's not location specific. It's very much character specific around courage, tenacity, optimism, perseverance, pragmatism. I think those, when I see that in a person who's pitching to me about something, if the idea has merit, it needs some changes. If the market is there and they haven't understood how to channel it yet, I think here's somebody that we can go with. And those to me are the traits that I look for. You know, when and I think COVID has become a very unique sort of soil to look at. You know, there's some impossibilities and difficulties out there at the moment, but yet there's still people who are showing themselves through that. And it's a very interesting time to be alive, to be honest.
It is. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
One thing that you also mentioned was like building the team, besides being pragmatic, besides looking things as a realist and optimistical, also a very stable ground, like you said, like Usain Bolt. He didn't become the biggest sprinter in the world out of the blues. He had to grow up and be nurtured, and all that stable ground in order for them to grow and become. I think being in a stable environment is one of the most important things in our lives, even if it's personal or professional. So like you said, you have that hard conversation when you have to. When is that let's say that area where you can grow and become the best in your business? Like I say, things are volatile, that always change. We can't say that business to be successful, they need to have this and that. That is not a proactive and innovative way of thinking, and I completely agree with you. It's all about the individual. If someone else, like I said, the character traits as you do, and like I say, I'm talking to you and I'm so inspired by your strength, by your experience, what you have built. So it's like I said, we need to think how to take things forward and how to work in a society together, not divided. That is also a thing that we need to understand as people. And for you that you are watching this podcast, think about this deeply. We need to work together to go far.
Absolutely. And you know, David, what you were saying about stable environment and consistency, what I've learned over the years, I think, you know, experience does bring some real insights. And you've got to it sounds so simple. And often when you're a younger entrepreneur, you're just running up hills all the time and your health is there for you. And you kind of think that, just let's get up the next hill and up the next hill, and you're not taking care of yourself. And you hear people say, you've got to create an environment that is sustainable. So for me, working long hours is understandable. We have to do that in a business. You've got to be radical when it comes to perseverance and tenacity, but you also have to look after yourself, because that actually allows your mind to be creative, etc. So in more recent years, I've taken up golf, and golf is a game that normally they say, how can an entrepreneur play golf? You're out there for 4 hours. But to get out in a natural environment for that time, to engage with different people who don't just want to talk about work, because often entrepreneurship is lonely. You can't talk to your spouse in certain circumstances because it relates to things that are going to affect them directly when it's financial, for instance. Your family is telling you must get out of what you're doing, so you can't tell them the difficulties or whatever it might be. Your friendship circles start to get less and less because you're just head down working. And so whatever it is for you, you've got to find a way that actually allows, especially in this day and age from a health perspective, mental health is huge. Creating a place where your mind can actually create, when you can rest. When I say rest, doesn't mean sleep. Now, I've got a lovely situation where I've got whatever you talk about it, a porch, a veranda with a beautiful chair, and I've got a lovely outlook. And I go out there early in the morning and I just sit and I give myself that time, whether you talk about it as meditation, as prayer, or just allowing just to start the day where it's not just straight up in and on the treadmill. And so talking about stability, cut out the toxic influences. If you have people in your life that are only feeding negativity and toxicity into you and you're continually having to defend, you've got to be very real, have that conversation with yourself and make sure that you tone down or get away from those sorts of voices. Because as an entrepreneur, you need things that are encouraging, that are building you up, and people that are blowing wind into your sails. That is, to me, when you talk about a stable environment. It doesn't have to be particularly a marriage or a family or your team or whatever, but you need that in the sense that if you're not married, find other outlets for yourself to be able to engage that are not only work related. But I find in my team, I don't employ dramatic characters, people that are full of drama and toxicity. You need just really good valued people that honor work ethic, honor time, honor each other. If they make a mistake, they own up to it. We keep short accounts with each other. This creates a very strong foundation that when the difficulty of business comes, we're not all up and down emotionally, etc. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the kind of way I've learned to build stability, build consistency, build things that have longevity so that you can face the extremes and dramas of just building business, because it is wonderfully dramatic.
Okay, let's go to our next question. After how many years of operation did you start to see results?
Okay, so this is an interesting question because I've had a number of businesses. I've raised venture capital from 11 different venture capitalists for a number of different startups that were smaller and quicker, and those that were longer. But I think they say typically it's, if you can make it past 3 years, that's normally when you start. I say you go from a survivalist to a more stable type of established business. And generally, I have found that the difference with the businesses that we build is that they're venture capital businesses. So they're not lifestyle businesses where we're looking to build an income and that our expenses are less than our income and we grow incrementally. We typically, grow into the hollow of the hockey stick where we're trying to prove traction on an idea and then we get a big investment. And so we very seldom wash our face or break even before those bigger investments come, because the money's coming to grow the opportunity. So it's a difficult question for me to ask because, it's not what is success. For me, success is big traction. It doesn't have to be big profit, because if I can realize value and traction, I get a much bigger investment, which means that the value of my business increases. We just had a $5 million investment out of Silicon Valley for one of our businesses, which is not profitable. But the idea is great and it's growing traction. And so they're putting more money in to grow it into different countries. So I think success is very relative. But for me, success really is when you can build a team and consistently over, I would say, at least a year, are able to pay that team and grow that that's when I can see that the business is successful. And that normally takes for me about 2 or 3 years.
So basically success, let's call it sustainability. I think that will be the best.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, from survivalist to sustainability, for sure.
Okay, let's go to our next question. How technology revolutionized your business?
Yeah, technology, I mean, our whole business is based on tech platforms. And I think that tech is just a medium to distribute product, services, opportunity, ideas. So technology for me is like a conduit. How do we do access to finance where you can't possibly meet every single person? You can't possibly know every finance product in your mind, no matter how clever you are. But if you build a system that can take algorithms and match, so technology has been really it's been the yeast, it's been the thing that's arisen our business and put us on the map. And I mean, my first job I had was in 1987 in a bank with a massive mainframe that's bigger than the home I live in now. And I've had the privilege of watching this metamorphosis and how technology, the things that we now, wear on our arm have more processing power and ability than the greatest machines that ran banks. And so I really had a great appreciation for the fact that technology is really a medium to get to the lowest common denominator of person who needs the same service as someone sitting in a privileged environment. So yeah, I think tech for me is distribution, it's channeling, it's access, and it really has been for us. I mean, it's what we do. We use tech to get practical solutions to people that otherwise wouldn't be able to access them. So it's everything to us.
Perfect. Another question. What are your future goals for Finfind?
Yeah, so our future goals for Finfind really, we're working with big global organizations like the IFC, the World Bank, around taking the solution that we have in South Africa and taking it to other countries in the continent and then other emerging markets. Really, the problem transcends borders and transcends languages and currencies. What it is, it's saying in every country, you have entrepreneurs who are trying to raise funding. So from the smallest amount of funding in a micro enterprise into medium business that's needing growth finance, ultimately, they don't know who all the lenders in their country are. So outside of banks, you've got private lenders, you've got government, there's grants, there's loans, there's equity finance, and who could possibly on one day know who all of those lenders are, what all of those finance products are, what are the criteria to access them. So in each country, we want to be able to provide that opportunity where every funder and finance product that is registered and legitimate in that country is inside of a database we detail them in over 60 points of matching. We have algorithms that do that, and then the entrepreneurs come in and find their product. So the leads matching engine that we develop is something that our dream is that in the SADC countries, the sub-Saharan countries, we'd be able to, and as soon as you do that, you can start to see what are the challenges. In one particular country, it might be that there's not enough business credit data. There's no history of that business paying back credit, so no one will lend to them. How do we solve this problem? And in other countries, because entrepreneurs aren't finance ready, they don't have their budgets and their financial statements. How do we solve this problem? In another country, it might be that they have the wrong types of funding products. The funders need to adjust their funding products. So if this is our dream, is to be able to take what we've managed to successfully do here in South Africa into many more countries. And I know that it's going to take, bigger teams. At the moment, I've actually stepped away from being the CEO of the business, and I'm now the Chief Innovation Officer because I see the new problems in a new country and how we can solve them. And there are better people that can run the operations and from a CEO point of view, HR, etc. Those aren't my strengths. So we're morphing now into releasing me into more innovation, into new countries. And we want to just really see replication and more SMEs get funding, because there's plenty of money out there. We're just not getting access to it. More businesses succeeding, more unemployed people employed. That's my dream. And along the way, being able to take a few more days off to play golf is my personal dream.
I agree. Okay, so thank you so much for that, Darlene. Darlene, another question is, Are people well informed about how to get finances for their businesses?
Yeah, generally, I think people aren't on the whole, because if you look in South Africa, most entrepreneurs will tell you they know who the banks are, but we know that the banks don't actually meet the requirements in this target market. There's some government funding, but they don't. I mean, they might know about 2 funds where there's actually 60 funds. So I think what it is, it's really around access to information. It's not ignorance by any point. It's really about the information is there, but it's not made easily available by the lenders. So that's all we've created in Finfind, is one platform that you can find all the information in one place. At the same time, we give them tips and tools. What are the basic things that a venture capitalist will look like versus what a bank will look for versus what a private lender giving you some cash flow assistance will look for? And so just access to information. So I think the average entrepreneur knows how to make their product, understands the service they're doing. They don't really understand finance record keeping. They certainly don't understand the terminology. Most entrepreneurs, if you say to them, who's the debtor? They can't quickly tell you, is that the person they owe who owes them? Is that the customer or the supplier? But if I say to an entrepreneur, who's the customer, they can tell me straight away. So I think sometimes the language that's used by funders, by accountants, is unnecessary. And so within Finfind, we simplify all of that. So the answer would be, I think people aren't well enough informed, or they don't have easy access to information, and that's what we're trying to do to assist.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Darlene, last question. South Africa has a very high unemployment rate. So people are encouraged to be entrepreneurial and start their own business. What advice do you have for young South African entrepreneurs?
Great. Look, I have a couple of pieces of advice. I think the first one is a mindset change. As you just said now, unemployment is high, so people are looking to become entrepreneurs. It's almost in South Africa seen as a second-class citizen, or if you can't get a job, go and be an entrepreneur. Now, in many other countries, that's not the case. So although we're quite innovative in terms of the ideas we have, there's no embracing of failure. Generally, it's not spoken about. And second of all, it's kind of entrepreneurship is seen as something to fall back on. That's something I want to see change in the schooling systems, etc. People should be encouraged to start their own business, to actually to embrace entrepreneurship as a first choice. But I want to say around, if somebody is unemployed and they're looking for a job, think of the stone in your shoe. What is the problem you have right now in your area? Whether you're in a township area, a rural area, the middle of an urban city, wherever you might be, you are the person who best understands the problem you have. Nobody from outside of your area can tell you what most people want to eat in your area or what the most difficult thing is in your area. So wherever you are, find that thing in the stone in your shoe that every day is rubbing your toe the wrong way. Take your shoe off, get that stone out. In other words, solve the problem, whatever that might be. You know, they said in the gold rush, which put South Africa on the map years ago, often the most money wasn't made by actually finding the gold, because that was from different people. It was the guy who made those pans that they would go into the river and throw the sand in and shake it till the gold was found. Everyone needed a pan to actually do that. And so what are the lateral ideas? If you see a market that's rising and everyone's doing something, look into what are the lateral things that are coming out of that you could actually do? And I often say, don't look at what skill you have, because sometimes, for instance, there might be a lot of people in our country that know how to do crafts, but the craft market is oversaturated, etc. Look for a problem. Nobody's got certain thing in your area, and go and find out how to make that thing, or go and find out how to get involved in being part of that production line. And so often I'm wanting to say, think laterally, but think about the problem you have, and start small. Start small, solve for that problem, keep your expenses small, maybe a little bit at a time, get somebody to come in with you. And if you can't afford to pay them, say to them, let's put our resources together. Let's live lean. Let's buy one pizza and share it together. Do you know what I mean? And slowly, I always say when you're a software developer, sometimes you can't pay developers. There's other ways you can give them work experience, etc. Think of the ways. People are keen to help each other. if you're looking for developers, go to the university and say, those ones that have just completed that need work experience, I can't pay them, but I can give them a real life project, because it's better to develop a real solution than some little, pilot project you're trying to do. There's so many ways we learned how to get ahead in those first years. So solve a problem you have, start small, grow with people that have the same values as you with different skills, and don't be scared to fail. That would be my advice.
Darlene, thank you so much. This was so inspirational to hear you and know from your experience and everything. I am, wow. If you guys like this amazing podcast, I hope you guys also feel so inspirational as I do at the moment. Darlene, I don't know if you would like to add anything else. How can people find more about Finfind? What are the platforms you guys are on?
Sure, very easy. Finfind is, as it said, Fin, F-I-N-D, finfind.co.za. The ZA is obviously for South Africa. That's where we are. SMEasy, which is an online accounting tool, does your quoting, your invoices, your payroll, and there's no accounting terminology. Doesn't say debtors or creditors or loan account. It says customers, suppliers, owners' money. It talks really simply. It's as it says, SM for small, easy, E-A-S-Y, smeasy.co.za. But generally, you could just Google and you should be able to pick up those things.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, once again, this was another great, amazing SA Entrepreneurial podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to destroy the like button below and see you in the next LivinginSAtv podcast. Wow, guys, wasn't this an amazing podcast? I don't know about you, but I learned so much with Darlene's experience, and to know the story behind these amazing entrepreneurs will show us how hard, but also how amazing it is to have your own project and develop and help other people to improve their lives. Anyway, destroy that like button and see you in the next SA Entrepreneurial podcast.